Hello, everyone. I am Anne Kampf, and welcome to the third session of the series Lead, Feel, Connect, a space created to inspire learning, connection, and growth. Today is a conversation leadership on the edge, thriving in paradox. I invite you, everyone watching, to take part in it. Use the chat, share your reflections, ask questions. Just don't be shy because your voice matters here. Recently, my daughter, she's 16, asked me one of the hardest questions I've ever been asked. How would I describe myself without saying what I do or what I have achieved? Think a moment about it. It's hard. It's a hard question, right? Well, if I take all that away, I'd say I'm endlessly curious about things and people, how things and people work. I'm drawn to patterns, to the hidden order inside what looks like chaos. But I'm also deeply emotional and empathetic by nature. I feel things intensely, other people's moods, energy, silence. My curiosity about what shapes the universe and what shapes us eventually became the heartbeat of my book, Red Thread Occult to Science and Beyond. In it, I explore how everything from myth to science and consciousness are connected through patterns. When people ask me about my leadership style, I always say Anne style. And that's not because I'm arrogant, but because I believe leadership is personal. To lead well, we have to understand our own patterns, our own biases, our default reactions. We need awareness. We need to be able to read the room, adapt, and stay present to what's unfolding. And that's exactly where my guests today come in. I am delighted to welcome someone who has profoundly influenced how many leaders understand learning, leadership, and the way we show up in the world. Sue Knight. Sue is an internationally respected NLP Master Trainer, coach, speaker, and author. Her book, NLP at Work, now in its fourth edition and translated into more than 30 languages, has become a cornerstone for those exploring communication, emotional intelligence, and conscious leadership. She's also the author of NLP and Leadership Exercises for Facilitators. What stood out for me when I first encountered Sue work is that she does not teach NLP as a collection of techniques or scripts. Reading her book, I found out that she teaches it as a way of being, grounded in awareness, in presence, curiosity, and authentic human connection. With roots in Liverpool's culture of humor and honesty, and with decades of work across France, India, Italy, Scotland, and far beyond, Sue brings global depth of experience shaped by diverse cultures and real human stories. Sue now lives in Dordogne and is a proud mother of two sons and a father of three. And when she's not teaching, you'll often find her cycling long distances. What makes Sue remarkable, it's not only her expertise, but her presence, elegance, and grace. Sue, I'm truly grateful that you are here. Welcome.
Thank you.
I am also very pleased to welcome a special guest, Chandana Patiraj, joining us from Sri Lanka. Chandana has had the joy of learning from Sue over the past decade. He's also an international NLP master, trainer, executive coach, and consultant for UNICEF. Welcome, Chandana.
Thank you very much for having me. And
Well, I would say we kick it off. And because the question my daughter asked me really stayed with me, I'm asking both of you and also the audience, If we take everything aside, your achievements, your studies, who are you, Sue Knight, and who are you, Chandana?
Who's going first?
Sue?
Whoa, there's lots of ways to answer that question. You answered it so Yuan answered it with that was a great introduction, by the way. I think you should carry on. It was wonderful. I think I learned more about you than we've had quite a few chats already. And some of the things you said in that introduction were a surprise to me, but lovely. So when you defined yourself, do you know what the category was that you used?
From NLP category, you mean?
Well, you took away what you'd use as an identity statement
Yes.
and said, so what am I if I'm not this, or I'm not what I have done? So what did you choose then to concentrate on?
My essence, what is deep in my soul and way of being without all the material things.
Yes, I thought, and you talked about curiosity and
Right.
learning your passion. So I think you really, what came out for me were your skills, your core skills. So if I take that line, because there are lots of lines I could take, I think I embody some of the attributes of NLP now, probably having taught it for such a long time, in that I am curiosity.
Mm.
I am a learner. I'm learning. I'm almost tempted to say all of the time. I'm part of a cycling group, and they were talking about and it's all ladies in this group online, and they were talking about why they cycle and what they cycle for, because they're mostly women over 40, and I'm well over 40. And I shared that I cycle, one of the reasons how I choose where I cycle is for freedom. Freedom's very important to me.
Mm.
And it's a paradox. We'll come on to that.
It's true. Yeah, it's true. If I think to freedom, there are several ways to see how one can be free and in which conditions.
Well, I'll come back to why it's a paradox for me anyway, but it is.
And
Because you
Chandana,
use that word when you introduced this session to me. There were some key words which I picked up on that you put into the title.
right.
And that was interesting to go, okay, if I go with those words, because it's very interesting that I put something into chat GPT, and it said, I talked about paradox, and it said people who use paradox, and it said Sue Knight uses paradox, but she doesn't say it, she evokes it. And I thought, well, that's very interesting to get that fed back to me. I was a paradox to put in a question and get my own stuff fed back to me in a way that I'd never expressed for myself. Anyway, there we are. A sort of answer to your question.
Thank you. And Chandana?
Well, I think I'm in the same page as both of you. The two words came to my mind when you were talking about is curious learner. The last 10 years, I've been learning from Sue. Is one of the reasons is that it never ends. I'm so curious what's there, and continue to explore. That's another word, explorer. Continue to explore what's unfolding in the space. So that curiosity keeps me going. in different things.
Beautiful. I mean, listening to what you have said, both of you, it makes sense why your works feels, I don't know, so alive. Because you are not just, it grows from who you are and not necessarily from only what you teach. So from my perspective, so you walk the talk. It's not just that you are giving a list, a checklist with things to learn, and that's it.
No. I mean, I think that to tell people things, to run through checklists, I think that if we tell stuff, then people don't learn so much. And I mean, that's an interesting kind of contradiction, because a lot of teaching is giving information. But I don't think it's the source of real discovery learning. I was just thinking about that moment when you asked me the question, and I like that you asked me that question. It kind of puts a framework. And in a way, the way that I believe we can discover who we are and who other people are, a way of being curious about people, is to notice, well, what did I do when you asked me that question? And I reflected back to you. So I took it in the moment. I didn't have a standard answer. I mean, those things are very important to me, and I probably would say freedom and curiosity, but I took it in the moment. So that's something that's very, I believe, important and characteristic, and it's very much a part of what I am, if you like, encouraging people to be on the trainings that we do, is to be in the moment and be able to respond to the moment, not to have a prescripted answer to things, not to follow familiar procedures, to find, and I think this is very relevant, leaders was also in the title. And I believe that leaders, are people who carve new paths, and they need new ways, new patterns, new vocabulary.
Right. But this makes me think, so all of us, in the personal life, in the professional life, we hear in our heads, you got to pay the bills, you got to meet the deadlines, you must do this, you must do that. And I think that only if we can kind of take all those must and got to and have to away, which is a hard way to do, only then we can really be present and concentrate at what we are doing now in this moment.
Well, there's some interesting patterns there in what you've said. So what you think, what you presuppose, is what you get. So you have, for example, said, you've used all the words that would be characteristic of words that, irrespective of the content, that it's about bills and paying for things, and concerns about money, irrespective of the content, they are words that are associated with tension.
Right.
Most people, many people, when they start thinking in terms of what they've got to do and must to do, will experience typically some tension. You said, and it's hard to do that. It's hard to take those things away. I understand why you say it. Nevertheless, it's an assumption. It's a belief. And whatever the circumstances, I mean, you'll find people on this earth who just do that, who take those things away, who decide they don't need to have what they have. They choose a different path. If you believe it's hard, it's going to be hard. So that's how our beliefs work. So this is part of, you talked about awareness at the beginning. So being aware of how we are speaking to ourselves and how we're speaking to other people is vital, because we're creating this map of the world. And the question is,
Mhm.
does that map serve us?
Right. This brings me to another topic. Me, and I'm sure that also many people that are now live in the audience have received emails where the sentences ended with the three dots. And for me, at the beginning,
From me.
years and years, no, years and years ago, I mean, 20 years ago, when I first received such an email, it confused me. I thought, do this person really does not know how to use punctuation? What do they want? But then I realized that it's a subtle example of, I don't know, how language and intention can shape experience. Because one could have the feeling that the person who wrote this and used the three dots is expecting more, or it you might have the feeling that you didn't do something as good as it was expected from you. So could you please explain what are those three dots?
My
Why
my three
are they
dots.
your three dots, and in general, why are you those three dots used? Because I think that knowledge,
That's a different question. Now that's a different kind of a question. So you've got two questions, and
right?
very different there. What those three dots are to me. Was it you that asked me that recently
Yes,
online? Yeah.
yeah.
And I thought, I haven't been asked that, I don't think, for a long time, because I use dots, multiple dots, a lot. Come on to the second part of your question. And I paid attention to that because I hadn't paid attention to it until you asked me the question. And it's kind of, there's more. I don't like to put an end to things. I think this is the reason. There's more, and it keeps it open-ended. It's also while I'm thinking rather than just typing. It's like I'm reflecting and I do the dots, and I often, the punctuation can be non-legitimate as well. What's that book? There's a book that I love. It's set in Kerala. And one of the things I love about it is that it breaks most of the rules of grammar. Like it doesn't use capital letters in the way we would expect. The punctuation generally is quite bizarre. It's a remark. Arundhati Roy. Oh, what's it called? Anyway, so I'm sure somebody in the audience could put it in the comments. There'll be people here who know which book I'm referring to. And I love that. I mean, it's deliberate. She's not done it by mistake. She's not done it, she's very, very aware of the patterns that she uses. So I love what's called in NLP terms. And some people, I'm thinking the group, I don't know who's online at all at the moment. This is very weird not to be able to see everybody. I hope somebody's going to put some comments in the box before long. And I will invite them shortly as well, because I want to know what people think about what we're saying, and I want to ask some questions. But there's a process called a tote. It's how we live our lives. We test, we do things, we test. Ideally, we exit, if we've achieved what we want, and we start a new tote. An open tote, one that's not fully completed, is very powerful and influential in its own right. And I think those dots are what I'd call, and some people will understand the term, open totes. However, you asked me a second question, which is, what does it mean for others? I haven't got the foggiest idea. I mean, I could guess, but it means unique things to unique people. I think that's a danger. I think that with NLP, one of the functions I believe it serves, and that I serve to refer to this and to challenge this, is that it's to challenge generalizations.
Okay. We do have a comment.
Oh, we do.
Yes.
I can't see it.
Sometimes it is a cultural translation problem that being created unintentionally. The three dots, I think.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. I just think this is the importance of curiosity, is rather than to assume what it is. Be curious. I mean, the fact you asked me what it was for me, you didn't make a generalized assumption about it. You asked me, and I had to think about it. And that was the value of that. Who knows what it is for other people? If people generalize, and often I'm in trainings, people ask me for generalized answers, say, well, what should we do if we're in this situation? I don't know. I mean, and what do other people do? Well, I can give examples, but that's not particularly helpful. It's generalizing as opposed to discovering.
Right.
I'm just curious if anybody else has got any my comments are dropping off the bottom of the screen. I don't know if I can change that. Any
So,
other comments from anybody or questions? Just pop them up.
yes,
Anything
please.
you'd add to that, Chandana?
I mean, it's all about different people have different unique ways of expressing themselves, and I'm with you because it's about keeping the assumptions aside and explore what it means to that person is what we need to really be curious about.
Yes, I mean, I might have a faulty full stop key that just repeats itself, you know. Sometimes you get that on a keyboard.
Right. We do have another comment.
What's Helen?
Helen Cummins is writing, I like it as an open thought. It says, and there's more.
Yes,
Yeah.
I like that too.
I also like it like this.
But
And
it's going to annoy some people who like, you know, correct traditional punctuation. And so that's something to consider.
right. And I was thinking NLP for me, from my perspective, is something that brings together knowledge from psychology, emotional intelligence, social intelligence, even language forensics, maybe. So it's a very complex knowledge. It's a very complex system.
It's
Experience.
a complex study.
Study. Thank you.
Yes, it's a study. That's important. It draws on these things. And I think emotional, you know, intelligence and qualities, for example, is a subset. It's a byproduct. Mind you, I made the mistake once of saying I was studying what's called Ignatian spirituality. And I said to one of the monks who was teaching it, this is like NLP. And he said, no, Sue, no, this is NLP is like it. So I think it's important where we put these things in relation to each other.
Right.
NLP draws on many things. It's a study. That's really important. It's not an academic set of principles. It's teaching people how to, and ourselves, how to learn the way we're born to learn.
Right. And this I find fantastic because on social media, probably we have seen also there are a lot of checklists what one has to do to be a, I don't know, transformational leadership or to be a servant leadership. And for me, you cannot just simply take a checklist and copy those things or just do those things. You have to experience those things. You have to see if they match to your core, to your
You're using have tos here, Anne. Are you aware of that?
no,
Right.
to your style. Because if you just do the things on the checklist, you will, in best case, look, I'm sorry, pardon my French, one will look constipated, but it will not be a true leader, because people will notice that it's not genuine. It's not coming from within, from an experience, and it's just checking a list.
That's quite a string of beliefs you've put out there. That's a pattern.
Yeah, let's say that's a topic that I put in the room for us to discuss and
Well, you
develop.
go back to something you said earlier. You said if we can take the things like we have to pay the bank, we have to do this, we have to do the other. I would say to you, well, I am saying to you, can you take the haves out in the first place? Have to. Change comes. I think it's in one of your previous sessions. One of the presenters was saying that it's really inclusion of people in an organization is really important.
Right.
And not to pay lip service, but to have people genuinely included. And the question is, and I think this is a question that through studying with this thing, this process of NLP, begins to help us answer the question, how do we do that? So a lot of these formulas with lists, they don't necessarily, and they usually don't give, how do you do that?
Right.
Stephen Covey said years ago, think with the end in mind. How do you do that if you're not used to doing it? And being aware of patterns is a starting point. And that's a belief, and I'm expressing it in that format intentionally. But I'm also highlighting your beliefs and your assumptions.
Yeah. They're not necessarily my assumptions. It's what I observed on social media.
Well, you express them that way.
Yes. Just to highlight them.
Okay, I'll let you off the hook at the moment then.
No, because since we are here, I'm going to make this a little personal for a moment. We've never met in person until a couple of weeks. I first reached you out by email, sharing my intention to start this series. And since then, we have exchanged a few messages and had our first get to know us call, 3 weeks ago. From an NLP perspective, from your perspective, so what patterns, besides those that you mentioned a couple of minutes ago, what patterns did you notice in me, in the way I wrote, spoke, or I showed up in that first interaction? And I'm asking you this because I'd love for everyone to see how awareness begins, because our patterns are visible, as you say, long before we are aware of them ourselves.
Yes. Okay. You want me to tell you now?
Yes. I don't have nothing to hide, and I think that the audience can learn from it as well as I can learn from it. So
I suppose one thing that came to mind was when you first asked me to do this session, you gave me a belief. So I think this is a pattern that you give beliefs. And of course, they can be very valuable and very supportive. Mm-hmm. You gave me the belief that you said leaders work in a state of conflict between this and that. And they have to, and I think you said have to, deal with paradox. So you use those words. And you said, and what I'd like you to cover are these things. Okay. So there were those beliefs, which I thought, I'm not sure I believe those things, actually, or I'm going to challenge those. And I can, as we talk about the content of those, and I have got a few slides which we've so struggled to get together. I think we should show some of them. And I thought, that's interesting. However, or you don't have to show it straight away with NLP. Okay, but that's about, we're exploring patterns of the experience. And you gave me a list of things to cover. I can't remember the exact words. They were all abstract things.
Right.
So I did not know what you meant by those things. And they were in the form of non-specific words that didn't contain any actions or sensory language, which would be the sort of language I'd use if I want to put somebody into a trance, for example. And I thought, now that's interesting. And I challenged you on those. I said, well, I wouldn't use this. I wouldn't say it like this. Having said that, I didn't take the list. I thought I wouldn't describe what I do or what I might do in those abstract terms. But I did use the opening sentence about existing in conflict and paradox as a real igniter of ideas. Not quite in the way you were suggesting it, in a very different way, but it gave me a great sort of impetus to be creative with that.
Right.
So,
yeah, I wasn't specific, and I didn't give actions or sentences or list with actions, because again, I believe that it's better to co-create than to come with something that's imposed.
fair enough.
Thank you. Chandana, how has language, tone, silence, I don't know, changed the way you coach leaders across cultures?
Well, before come to that, thank you very much for the question. Before come to that, I'd like to just share something that I just observed in the conversation between you and Sue.
Do you want to take the slide down
which
now,
is,
Anne, as well? You can take that slide down.
So I think this is also related to the paradox that we are talking about, right? In one side, we want to see something in the world in the way that, okay, this is how things can be, or I would like them to be. At the same time, we operate with a belief that, since that we talked about the beliefs, we operate with the belief that limits us to be that way. And that itself is a paradox. Like Sue said beautifully, that the moment that you drop the word have to, you become what it's to be. So I just wanted to put it as I just observe, like sometime Sue was talking about the patterns here. One tiny pattern, or one word maybe, can create a paradox, being and not being something in our life, in our leadership styles.
Okay.
And when I coach, sorry, Sue.
No, carry on.
And to your question about how we go through the cross culture and talk to people, one thing I really learned from Sue here is as well, like I've been coached different people, different cultures, different value systems. But beyond all of that, beyond the culture, beyond the language, beyond everything, or beyond the skin, color of the skin, there's a human who've been programmed their minds in different ways. And the moment that we cross all those barriers and connect with that human and operate that with that human, noticing their own patterns, like Sue was also expressing, it's easy to work with them because we are curious to uncover those patterns of these people. And when we try to uncover that, as we uncover that, they also become aware of. So we as coaches, I as a coach, I just work as a mirror for them to see what they have not seen probably.
There's a slide that we might show later on, which is an illustration of, well, not that one. We can leave that one for the minute. Let's see, what's the next one, Anne? Show the next one and see what, I can't remember what's called. Okay, let's just move on from that one. What's the one after that for the moment? We can come back to that. Okay, there's a good one. Your brain, my brain, your brain lies to you constantly. And that's evident in your nonverbal behavior and in the way that you structure your
Mm.
language to yourself and to other people. And the question is it lying to you in a way that works for you, or is it not? And coming back to that have to, for example, you could think, well, how can I be in a position where I don't have to pay a bill, that's outstanding or something like that, which is a big chunk. That's a big thing to consider. And what I'm saying is practice letting go of the haves, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
You do that. That's something that's within our control, is how we change the structure of how we speak. So we're dealing, and that's important. I'm going to be led by the slides in it. So we can change the structure of our thinking and our experience much more easily, than we can change anything else. And changing the structure, we do change our experience. Let me come on to this. Okay, paradox. I was going to ask the group, what they think is paradox. And I can still ask that question, just to say what's here. So when things are simple or when they're straightforward, we don't necessarily, that's a generalization, but we don't necessarily notice how we're thinking. We do things, and we do things often automatically and intentionally if you have an awareness. We may not notice what we're attending to. We may not notice what kinds of things as a pattern we put our attention to. But for example, if you put your attention to what's not right and what's gone wrong in a day, you're going to affect your whole state. You're going to affect the way your brain works.
Right.
Whereas if you pay attention to, what's gone well, in a day, what am I enjoying? It changes. We don't notice the choices that typically, in most cases, that we're silently making. I think I've fed some patterns back to you today that you may not have been aware of.
Right.
However, on the edge, and the question is, what's an edge? But when we're at the edge, and there are ways of getting ourselves, and I would say it's a key role in coaching, is how to encourage people to go to an edge, not keep them comfortable, for example. That's often when two truths seem to pull against each other and patterns reveal themselves then. It was like we're on an edge and it's new and it's uncomfortable. Then we reveal things about ourselves that we might not if we're in a comfortable position.
Correct. And this facilitates growth. I would like to come back to another topic that we discussed few seconds ago. I will come back to this. I have to, or I must do.
Yes. Do you want to take that slide off now? That paradox one off.
Right. I think that what works for me, if something happens, for example, with one of the kids, and I have to, and I'm also in the office working, and I'm in the middle of something. What helps me is to take something that I call the observer and ask myself, how am I doing now? What's happening? What am I feeling? And the problem, this must to, have to, whatever, it's an hypothetical example. This will stay also until the end of the day if it's not, God forbid, an accident or something else. And then I can concentrate on the task that I'm doing in that present moment. So my mind will not flip to the must and have and got.
So you can ignore your children while you
No,
concentrate on
no,
your work.
it's not an ignoring, but for example, if they need me to bring their book because
Okay.
they've
Not like
forgotten it.
they're ill
Yeah.
or
That's why I said God forbid an accident, because the children always come first. Or an, I don't know, a bill. A bill will be there also couple of hours after the present moment.
so. You have a question?
No, it was just a comment from
Okay.
my side, and maybe the question is, if you find yourself in a paradox situation,
Yeah.
how would you solve it? How will you deal with it?
Everybody, you've just described your own unique way of dealing with it. That's your strategy for that kind of situation. I don't know whether you use it constantly in those scenarios, but that's your strategy. And
Mhm.
that's the beauty of that. If that works for you and works as a win for everybody involved, or a win for you if that's what you want, the value is for everybody to find their own strategies, not necessarily to use that one that works for you. It could work. I'm sure it would work for other people. But the value is in being able to find our own ways and to have that flexibility, to have those choices in the way that we think and behave and speak, that we can switch the way we're doing things, whereas typically we default to a particular way. So
Mm.
you have strong preferences in the way that you express things. And it's interesting. If I may, can I give you some more feedback?
Yes, sure.
When I said to you, you gave me these titles in the definition of what you wanted me to do today. And you said, how do we deal with paradox and how do we help leaders manage in a position of conflict? And I said, I didn't quite identify with that way of saying things. I don't think of the world in that way.
Mm.
But it did spark other things for me. You didn't ask me what other things it sparked.
This was my next question.
When's it coming?
Now, what were the other things that sparked in you, and what was that?
Well, okay. You have an interesting way of responding to feedback. What it sparked in me was that I believe that paradox and stimulating paradox is the key to enabling people to learn. And it's something I would, if I'm doing what I would call provocative coaching, it operates on paradox. So does NLP. Coaching with NLP, not everything else, not the modeling. It operates on the basis of paradox. Do you know how would you define paradox?
Me?
Yes.
Well, starting with the teenagers, because that's something close to home.
Well,
I think that there's, sorry?
You personally, I'm curious what paradox is for you.
For example, let's take the COVID time. We were confined, but I didn't find this confinement as limiting my freedom, because I could learn more, I could research more, I could get in contact with people that otherwise I wouldn't have found the time to do this.
So what's your
I could get in
definition of
contact with them.
paradox based on that?
There are two things that are contradicting themselves, but living
Seemingly.
in this. Yes.
Yes. So there's something on the surface, it seems as one thing, but actually there's something beneath the surface which is kind of at odds with that, and they both exist. That's a paradox. It's a deeper truth. So what you're saying is, on the surface, COVID seemingly presented a confinement and a restriction, using my word. And yet, the paradox is that it gave you great freedom to learn and to study things. That's a great example of paradox. Yes.
Thank you.
And
Just
I have
go
a
on.
question.
Yeah. Yeah, go on, Chandana.
I have a question to you, Sue, right now. Now, here you're talking about the paradox. And earlier also you talked about the tote, having a tote with the three dots that you said sometimes you leave an open tote to people. How does this tote can work in the context of a paradox?
How can the tote work in the context of a paradox? Well, I suppose there's many ways. I suppose one way, a classic way, is that many people think, for example, in the context of coaching, traditional training, you must come up with like an action plan and a resolution. When actually the paradox may be to leave it open. And so, for example, in provocative coaching, one of the principles is to not give an answer. Quite the opposite. And the paradox is that people come up with an answer for themselves. If you give a ridiculous response to someone, entertaining and maybe generating laughter typically, with an intention of learning, you're not giving an answer. The consequence and the intention is that people come up with their own answer. That's a paradox. So most of, I'm hesitating, is it all, but most of provocative coaching is that you're presenting people with a paradox. It's like, I've come to you, for a solution and for, and ideas of what to do. And you're telling me maybe there's no solution for me, that it's not, well, I've got a problem. Well, everybody's got problems. Maybe you're stuck with it, for example. Done in a particular way, said with the intention. It's the intention that matters. There's a whole style to provocative, but you're actually evoking a paradox. And that paradox creates a state of disturbance, discomfort, lack of equilibrium. That's where change happens, is my belief and my experience.
Right.
So many ways, but that's one example. I also, just some of those slides, if you show some of those slides with the single statements on, these are based on NLP. Well, let's just take that one. So provocative coaching works with paradox. It exaggerates the problem, rather than on the surface. So this is about what happens on the surface and what happens beneath. It amplifies fear in order to release the grip of it. It agrees I agree with a stuck belief. And that's a paradox. When you agree with somebody's stuck belief, they're freed from it. And it's like, oh my God, somebody's agreeing with me, what do I do? So the paradox is the opening, and humor particularly and love make paradox a safe context in which to learn.
Right.
So let's move on to one of the slides with the single. This is a paradox. What you avoid controls you. People who seek to delete things and shut it away. Well, it's there, and it comes and haunts people after a while. You cannot delete things and shut them away permanently. Okay, let's see another one. Yeah, you're not who you think you are. So your opening question is a really good one. So the evidence of who I am is what I do. What do I practice being? What am I an example of? Not what I say I am. So what I say to you is irrelevant in a way. It's like, what are you experiencing in me? That's who I am.
Right.
Whoop. Let's see the next one. Yeah, who you surround yourself reprograms you potentially, but it's very strong influence who we spend time with. I don't know who's got children in the background, but they're certainly making their voices heard. Okay, we're wired for emotion, but we regulate it. So lots of people contain their emotions. I'm not suggesting people like these are all paradoxes. If you take all the what we call the beliefs of excellence, the presuppositions in NLP, they're ways of reframing our experience, but paradoxically. There's one here that says, you know, our bête noire, which is a French expression meaning the person who haunts us, that we really, you know, gets on our nerves, that we just are challenged by. They're a gift. That's a paradox. And to be able to live that and let that, that's it. They're a gift, but that's not how many people would see them. And these are, yeah, voila. Okay. You have a question. Do you want to take that?
No, I don't have a question. We have a comment from Helen Cummins.
Great, Helen. Good for you. Fire away. What's there, chat, which caught my attention? How do I do? That's a question that leaves me in the driving seat. I don't need the answer. I can't see the bottom line because it disappeared off for some reason. Perhaps if I minimize my screen, I'll see the comments. Yeah, it's a question that leaves me in the driving seat. I don't need the answer, even if I think I do.
But I'm enjoying the experience in the moment.
Yeah, I think that's a paradox for many people, is how to let go of the need for something else to what they have at the moment, as opposed to be with what they have. You probably live this, Chandana, more than most people I know. Yeah. It's quick. Which tense are we operating in? So with NLP, we learn to, I would say, dwell more often, consistently in the present. Many of the questions that we use, that we teach, that we learn, are present tense questions. And the consequence of that, although I'm not teaching people how, you know, be in the now, but those ways of operating, that's a byproduct, to be in the present.
Right. It's very important to be in the present.
That's a belief, by the way.
Yeah, I strongly believe that it's important to be in the present, mainly when you are having a conversation. It's a thing of respect from my perspective. You can learn, or one can learn a lot from conversations just by being present. And just being present opens also a lot of opportunities. Thinking to the past, it doesn't bring much. You get stuck there, and worrying of the future.
That's a belief. I don't know, some people, historians, dwell in the past. They don't get stuck there, I don't think. They explore it and they move on. What I'm saying to you, Anne, is, are you aware of that structure of when you're expressing a belief?
No.
Right.
I'm doing it unconsciously.
I know.
It comes out.
I know. Yeah. And that's why I'm challenging it, because beliefs can be a bit like COVID. They're infectious when you put a belief out, because people, and it's really important to recognize that, because we are bombarded with beliefs, you know, from the media, from politicians, from, you know, all sorts of people. And unless you recognize them, unless I recognize them, there's a risk I'm going to just absorb them and take them on and hold them. Right. And so being able to, the value of being aware of my experience and to be aware of other people's experience, I find, is that I can decide, like, for example, with your email to me, I could have just taken it, thought, well, that's what you want, that's true. But I didn't. I challenged it in myself, which was very helpful to me.
Right.
I had a choice, and I was aware of that choice because I was aware of the structure, the pattern of beliefs.
Right. And it was also helpful to me because you challenged it for you. Uh, and you said challenging others' beliefs, questioning, noticing. This means being curious and asking why, right?
I wouldn't typically, it depends. Why is a tricky question. Why takes us often into the past, explanation, head
Okay.
thinking. How or where's that come from or in what way? Depends on the context. I mean, there's times and the place. If I'm in a chat in the village, having an apéro, I'm not going to ask those questions because people think, oh, Sue's doing her NLP thing. I mean, it's like stick to the pattern of what's around me, time and a place. However, if it's appropriate, if it's coaching or training or learning, or if you're in a deep conversation with somebody, to be curious about how they do things generates learning on how I can do things differently. If I learn why somebody does it, well, that's their why.
Yeah, it's just part of the answer. It's not the whole answer.
It's a particular type of answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
Helen, are you the only one there now? Because you're the only one asking questions and making comments. Thank you, Helen. Does anybody else have a question or a comment?
right. Just at least say hi if you don't have a question, just for us to know that you are there.
We don't know who's there, if anybody's there other than Helen at the moment, because I can't see people and we don't get a list online. Maybe it is just Helen. Oh, I love it. I've enjoyed it anyway, and Chandler.
Me too. Me too. And I'm really grateful that you both
Likewise.
accepted to be my guests.
And thank you very much for inviting me without really knowing me very well. I really, really appreciate that. And I appreciate your openness to this sort of banter that we're having as well.
I think that's the way, or I like when we can share
Yes,
based on experience and what we live in the moment, and not just what we were taught, and
yeah,
that's it. Just from the brain, but
yes,
from the heart also.
yes. You're a
Um,
great, you're a great sport in the sense you've taken my sort of comebacks to you and asked for them as well, and that's a special quality to have that.
Thank
I
you.
believe. I believe. So I'm following the same pattern. Good
Well,
view, Helen. Full attention.
so Chandana, thank you for sharing your wisdom, humor, and heart with me, with us today. To everyone listening, thank you for your attention. Thank you for being here.
Chatu, thank you.
Um, may you carry this awareness and this experience into your next meeting, moment that will come next, project, or even next conversation. Don't miss the next session, which is on Wednesday, November the 12th.
Okay, I'll give you a bit of advice here. Say,
Yes.
remember to attend the next session on the 12th.
Thank you. So, everybody, please remember to attend the next session on the 12th. Storytelling power, tools and
Wow.
technique to create connection and change with Michaela Bley. Until then, stay curious, stay connected, and keep learning how to lead with purpose. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Chandana.
Thank you, Sue.